Well, been a little while, hasn't it? Welcome back. Name's Macabre Derek. This is another RPG rant. Let the rambling begin. So, we're going to end up talking about improvisation. When I end up writing a game, I would honestly say 90% of it is improvised. That's not to say I'm lazy and don't flesh things out or end up taking a lot of notes. I literally have on my shelf back there probably 5 books thicker than the rule book for Vampire the Masquerade 20th edition. And each one of them is based around a campaign that I've run at some point in my given time. Now, it's something to be said about preparation. Preparation's great. You can detail your world down to the last grain of sand on this beach, in this plane, whatever. But that's not what I'm going to be discussing today. Right now, we're going to discuss the improv version and what makes it successful and what doesn't, as for my own experience anyway. So, where do we begin? The first thing is you have to understand your setting. Second thing you're going to need to understand is players. Third, you're going to need to end up practicing a very interesting skill, which is figuring out how to tie things together that seem completely unrelated to one another. So, first thing, setting. This can come down to what game you're playing. Could be Within the Ring of Fire, could be Vampire the Masquerade, could even have some fun with Dungeons and Dragons, Pathfinder, Black Crusade. Yeah, these are mine anyway. So when you end up taking the time, really flesh out that world. If you're going to spend any time with preparation, it's going to be in the world that you are trying to give to the players. And make no mistake, that's what you're doing. You're giving this world to your players. Well, how's that? I thought I was supposed to be writing things. You know, I'm the ST, I'm the GM, I'm the flame tender, I am God of my own domain, if you dare get so exuberant. But if you stop and think about it, this is the core of all storytelling when it comes down to any kind of role-playing game. If you know exactly how this campaign's going to end, you're probably dragging your players along, and they might do one or two cool things that are a little bit sideways, but for the most part, and I've seen this before, players have gone this way, and I haven't planned for it. I need to grab hold of them and drag them back, saying that you can't do this. My personal failing in this particular bit was probably one of the first games I ran, in which case every time the players end up going off the beaten track, a golem would appear that was hunting them down. I really want to end up going over that campaign again and just end up revisiting it. Just take the concept and actually give it some degree of justice. But then again, I was playing Resident Evil 3 Nemesis, and for anybody who's played that, you probably get the idea. That aside, create the world, create your NPCs. Spend a lot of time with those NPCs, because when you spend time with those NPCs, you know how they work, you know how they think. You know what kind of city you have, and you know how it's going to react to the players. If you know that, it's reacting. I think, all honesty, one of the games that live and breathe the best are when you're not playing to what you're supposed to be doing. You know, your villain's going to be doing this. That's great. But the best games are when all of a sudden your big bad decide to, okay, we have this orchestrated plot in order to take over the world. Because, of course, you want to take over the world. The world is a better place with a villain in charge. Everybody knows this. But somebody forgot to inform the player characters, and they're not exactly on board with this. That comes down to understanding your players. Make them matter. I've said this about backstories before, and it really bears repeating. You'll find I repeat myself quite frequently, usually because they're very important points, especially when I'm concerned anyway. Look at their backgrounds. Look at what kind of story they want to tell. Because then you can start taking that cool factor, the thing that makes that character interesting, dynamic, and find where that background might end up coming in. Make it a very simple example, right? Well, we all know about the orphaned adventurer, but then you find out maybe later on that you weren't orphaned because your family's dead. You're orphaned because maybe your parental figure ended up joining this cult that works underneath the big bad. And suddenly they had to end up giving the chance for you to end up having some kind of normal life because their deeds to this new, great, and up-and-coming near godlike figure is going to be far too intensive. And they had to learn to sacrifice, and that's what they sacrificed to make the better world. And you just happen to be a part of it. Well, now all of a sudden you got a little bit of ties to work in. Find ways to take these player characters' backgrounds, their interests, and all this, and find how it could fit and be tied into the villain. It makes it more personal, right? And this doesn't require a lot of planning, really, if you stop and think about it for 3 seconds. I was given a piece of advice, and this comes down to point 3. Learn to make associations. What do I mean by associations? Well, if we end up taking, we'll take that same adventurer for sake of argument. I know that they're an orphan. I know they were taken in by the guard, right, and raised as a soldier. Right? They maybe became a squire or something, and let them end up learning a little bit of sword and board. Once they became of age, they decided they wanted to find their place in the world, and so they went off to adventure, not knowing that your little plots that are happening in the background are slowly coming to fruition. However, these backgrounds can end up coming back a lot. What if, for instance, that same guard needs to be infiltrated? Well, what happens if we end up taking this objective, this character? Well, how do we tie these together? Well, maybe we can use the parents to use him to infiltrate. Oh, now all of a sudden he might be working for the bad guy, but he doesn't know it yet. He just knows that his parents are back. He gets the chance to ask all those questions. Have a moment. Then he's betrayed. What does he do with that betrayal? Maybe he feels the need to get some vengeance. Maybe he needs to end up chasing after his parents who are working under this villain. Maybe, just maybe, he needs some help. And he starts dragging the party along. What if we got these elements in place, but what was it that they needed? Maybe they needed information to end up gaining a particular magic MacGuffin that'll end up helping these plans come to fruition. Well, all of a sudden, how do we tie that again? And we keep doing this. We keep thinking, how does this tie into this character? How does this tie into this character? Where does this piece fit? Associations. And because you end up practicing these associations, you have your NPCs, you have your players, you have your setting. Let them run. Sometimes you're going to want the big fantastical ending. Other times it might be just a personal story that is told. The bump in the road, this little aspect of a person's life. You don't know where it's going to head. But you do know that it's going to go somewhere. And I think that's probably the most exciting part. as a storyteller is I'm discovering this plot right alongside the players. Because while I might know what the NPCs are doing, while I might know what the prince is plotting, while I might know the betrayal that is coming from another neonate, or maybe I know that a great unclean one lurks beneath the hive city, I have no idea what the players are going to do. And that can be a ride all unto its own. If you found this at all helpful or gave you some food for thought, feel free to end up pressing the like button. And if you want to end up staying tuned for more RPG rants and other interests of mine that might appear on this channel from time to time, feel free to hit subscribe. It'll end up being quite a ride. Until next time.